Okay, let's get started here. So, everybody, thanks for joining us today. You got Josh and Casey here with Baker AV for our remote R&D session. We appreciate you taking some time with us on discussing the topic at hand. Casey, I'll hand it over to you.
We are sitting with Paul England. He's the Director of Channel Solutions from SNA. We're going to talk about how DirectView LED is currently playing a major role in how we communicate and how we feel large display technology is going to be incorporated into the corporate and public spheres moving forward. And as always, we are super excited to see you, Paul. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about SNA?
Sure, thanks, Casey. As you said, I'm Paul England. I'm Director of Channel Solutions with SNA Displays. I've been in the LED business about 8 years and been in large format communications for about 25 years. So I started when I was 5. But I've been doing this for a minute, which is cool. But yeah, SNA Displays, we are one of the largest manufacturers of LED in the world. SNA is Sansi North America. And so our parent company, Sansi, has been making LEDs since 1992. So we're one of the original manufacturers of this stuff going way back. We have about 2 million square feet of manufacturing, and we produce about 3,000 square feet of LED display every day. So we make a whole lot of this stuff. You may know a lot of the projects we've worked on. We did about 2/3 of the displays in Times Square. We do the displays for Salesforce. If you've ever seen like the waterfall around the elevators or things like that, we've done more than 40 displays for Salesforce around the world. We do the displays for Apple. We do for YouTube. We do for a lot of other companies. So we may not be a household name, but you certainly will recognize some projects we've done.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. I think some of the Salesforce projects are among my favorite. They're absolutely incredible. I encourage everybody to go check them out.
They should be in a museum. I mean, their art, it's pretty amazing.
Awesome. Thank you. Certainly, well, we owe a lot of that to the amazing content that's on those displays, right, for sure. I mean, we have some terrific friends in the content space that we love to promote as well.
Right. All right, so I'm going to jump into some questions here.
Sure.
All right, since COVID-19 has made its presence and we're all discussing it, we've seen a temporary shutting down of our favorite sports and entertainment venues. And there's been an emergence, at least in the mainstream, that we haven't seen before with esports. Can you tell us a little bit about how LED is leading the charge for fan user experience?
Sure. Well, like you said, I mean, we're seeing that was a really massively growing space even prior to this COVID stuff. We saw esports is just really growing incredible leaps and bounds. Something that absolutely blew my mind when I found out about it was the state of Alabama. You can now get a varsity letter for esports, which is incredible. Think about that in Alabama, college football center of the universe, they like to think, at least. But yeah, so that's pretty incredible. And we're seeing that the growth in those spaces is just huge. Universities offering esports scholarships and growth in that. Everything from sort of the first-person shooter type stuff, which is really popular, the Fortnite and Overwatch and things like that, and even the more traditional replications of stick and ball sports, so Madden, NBA 2K, FIFA, etc. So we're seeing huge amounts of interaction in that. In fact, most of the major pro sports teams now have an E element. So you have, the Orlando Magic is kind of leading the way there. They have the Orlando E Magic, which is a whole esports team that does not only NBA 2K, but they do a lot of the other games as well, which is pretty incredible. As you said, with the stoppage of all stick and ball sports and really all sports in general due to COVID, we've seen that esports got accelerated into the mainstream. I thought it was a pretty big watershed moment for esports when a month ago they did a NASCAR race as an internet stream, and then the next week it was on FS2, and then the next week it was on Big Four Network Fox in prime time on the weekend, and they did that for the remainder of the month. So IndyCar, NASCAR, Formula One have all been doing major network broadcasting of esports, mostly through, I think most of those were iRacing. So that's been exciting that we've seen it really accelerate there. So, but to go back to your question, how is LED part of that? Well, we're seeing a lot of investment in esports venues. So universities have been doing some. In fact, I don't think we're quite ready to announce it, but I think we're working on one of those with Baker that I think is really close to being finalized at a university. But and we're working on a few other venues that are adjacent to major conventional stick and ball sport venues as well. So we've got a couple of those in the fire, and we're seeing a lot of interest in that from a lot of those. So what makes that different from regular traditional sports is instead of actually watching the athletes on a field or on a court or on the ice or whatever the sport is, you're actually viewing that on a display. So if you're going to the venue, you need a really big display where you can not only see what they're seeing on their screen, and you may want to watch multiple competitors, but you also want cameras on the competitors because it's the human element of it, not just what you're seeing on the screen. So you need to be able to show the competitors as well as the action going on, and maybe even have a director that's doing a third-party view, so there's sort of a spectator view, and you need to be able to combine all that in a compelling way that the people in the venue are seeing the most important things going on at all times, give it a sense of event, give it a sense of a moment. So you're actually in that moment when the decisive moment, or you're down to the final two or whatever that is. And because unlike regular sports where you have to have a million cameras and hope somebody's catching that, did he step out of bounds? Did he tag him at second? Instead of just hoping you catch that, because it's esports, you did catch it because it's all virtual, it's all data. So a director can go back and change whatever camera angle they want. You can get as good a replay as you want, and it's always adjudicated perfectly because it's also a computer. So it gives them the opportunity to really dive down into the event. And for the people who are attending these events, having a very large format display or multiple displays to be able to see that action in real time is just critical to the experience.
I imagine too, it allows pop-up mobility events as well for esports, where there's a few facilities around the country that are being built, and we're really excited about hopefully being a part of that. But with some of the technology you guys have, you can kind of pop up an esports venue and roll with a lot of stuff, correct?
Yeah, you can, and we are seeing that. In fact, traditionally, the big sort of grand national events for a lot of the better titles have traditionally been at places like MGM Arena in Las Vegas and places like that, where most of the displays are what our industry calls a rental and staging display, or a temporary display that gets popped up. So that is how it has been and will probably continue at some level for the foreseeable future. And like you said, the really exciting thing is that we're now getting dedicated esports facilities where that sort of thing just did not exist. The first big shot over the bow was when the Texas Rangers baseball team built the esports complex in Arlington, right immediately adjacent to the baseball park, and really sort of set the tone. And a lot of other pro conventional sports teams saw that as a way to utilize their facility. Even baseball is a highly used facility with 81 home games a year. But if you think of an NFL franchise where, in the course of a season, they have 8 home games, and I guess if you count preseason, they have 10, or maybe they make the playoffs and it might be 12. But you have this billion-dollar arena that you really need to find lots of additional uses for. And of course, you have concerts and things like that. But esports are really great because they can be anytime. So unlike concerts where you have to wait for the artist and performer to be passing through your neck of the woods to be able to plan your event and plug it into their tour, you can host an esports event anytime you want, because finding competitors, they can be wherever they want to be and log in. So you can have competitors there, you can have people logging in remotely. And so even those venues that do that today have events. Every Wednesday is Overwatch Wednesday, for example, and people can be on site and use the computers on site or bring their own computers, or they can log in remotely, and you're still getting that direction, basically television-like direction. And they're streaming it on platforms like Twitch and YouTube Live that we're on right now. So platforms like that are given a lot of visibility to it. And I think it's a very just to tack on one more thing to it, it's a very egalitarian thing where you don't have to be 6'6", and you don't have to be incredibly gifted at being able to hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. It really is one of those things where people in even marginally developed countries can download this free software and get decent enough at it to go be competitive. So I think it makes it one of those where everyone can see that and go, you know what, I think I want to try that. And so the user base is growing at an exponential rate because the barriers to entry are so low.
You know, you said something that it's so obvious once you said it, but I hadn't even considered that the players, they don't even have to be there. They can just log in from anywhere. And that's great, especially, you know, if we're still practicing social distancing. So that was so obvious. I had never even considered that before.
Sure, yeah. If you just think of the NASCAR event this past Sunday, right? So they had 33 cars in the field, and no two of them were in the same room. And so you had a couple of guys in Australia, you had some people in North Carolina, some people in Texas, some people in California. You had the 33 car field, no two people were even in the same room. So they were hither and yon, I suppose, if you want to call it that. But people were all over the place, and they were still able to compete head to head in an actual event that also got a pretty good market share on Fox, on regular Fox. So that's
wild.
a crazy thing. It's a crazy time we're in.
To take a sidestep or let's say juke in the sports terms, going back to traditional sports, we talked about this in our prelim meeting, but there's been some new legislation that's going to open up sports books kind of at least slowly nationwide. And if folks can't pack stadiums at full capacity, how do you see LED playing a role in forming smaller venues?
Yeah, Josh, you said it right there. That's probably the biggest piece of this, is that we're not going to put 70,000 people in a stadium anytime soon. That hopefully we'll get back to that at some point, but it's probably not this fall, and it may not even be next spring. I don't know when that's going to be, but whenever that is definitely in the future. So as you said, if people want to still experience something other than their living room, the way to do that is to get out to a sports bar or something like that. What makes it extra exciting, as you mentioned, is not that long ago, Congress passed the opportunity for basically any sports bar to become a sports book. Now they're rolling it out state by state, and I don't know all the rules behind that. That's somebody else to figure out those things. But they are rolling it out state by state, and the ability to do on-site digital pari-mutuel betting in places other than Atlantic City and Las Vegas, right? So that is a pretty interesting thing. So that we're going to see that rolled out to all 50 states. I don't know the whole rollout, like I said, but it is coming. And effectively what that's going to mean is all of the sports bars. So, $3 Cafe or Buffalo Wild Wings or Hooters or whatever, in order to remain relevant as a sports bar, are also going to become a sports book, which also means that they can find a new profitability stream inside their restaurant. And the way you entice people to come to your restaurant rather than the guy across the street or the people down the street is to have the best venue. So you want to have big, comfortable chairs. You want to have a huge display. You want the opportunity that when it's Sweet 16 weekend, you want all 8 games on the screen, so you're sitting around eating wings and enjoying that. But during Super Bowl Sunday, there's really only one thing going on, so you want the whole display to be the Super Bowl. So you want the flexibility of having a very large display that you can blend, and you can make a wide variety of things going on. There's times during the baseball season when there may be 12 or 14 games going on at the same time, and some people want somebody in there wants to see any one of those games. So the ability to be able to spread that across a very large display, or maybe make the home team the largest one in the middle and surround it by all the other games. Also, the other part of it is fantasy sports is still a huge thing. So being able to blend in fantasy statistics, even co-located with watching the game. So you can see real-time fantasy statistics for the game you're watching, and you can blend all that, because it's just a huge tablet or a tableau that you can put anything you want on it and sort of make it rearranged with whatever data you want. So video is just data, so it's just another stream, and you can put it all up there and make a beautiful thing of it.
Awesome. So shifting gears a little bit, we're having conversations every day about the new workplace. So with the potential to rethink or reconfigure the physical office environment and the need for collaboration with folks that are either working at home or on-prem, we feel there's an excellent opportunity to incorporate LED into everyday workspaces. How do you see DirectView enhancing the way we conduct business moving forward here?
So I think there's a few things that that fit into this. Most notably, what we're doing right now, Zoom or Microsoft Teams or GoToMeeting or whatever, these virtual presences, that's become our new normal for a lot of people. There's still a lot of things that we want to do in person. There's still a personal aspect that can be blended in there. But if we're going to blend these meetings, so we're going to have a Zoom meeting combined with an in-person meeting, to do that where everybody's crowded around a phone or crowded around even like an LCD television is not going to give you the same experience as being there in person. But theoretically, you could have conference rooms with very large video walls where everyone, all the participants, even spread out in the what I call the Brady Bunch view. I don't know what the official term for it is, but even in that, everyone's still roughly life size. So you're still getting much better interaction between all the participants, and it still feels more like a real meeting. I definitely think we're going to see a lot of growth in that. We're going to see that's just going to change how we use those conference spaces. You know, you guys are big proponents of utilization studies and putting sensors in rooms. I think we're going to learn that we're not using spaces the way we used to. So how do we take this corporate real estate that is maybe now underutilized and get more value out of it? And I think some of that is to turn them more into executive briefing centers, or we think, what are the things that we want to be in person for? Is that sales presentations? Is that executive briefing? Is it high level meetings? What is that? What are we using these spaces for? And then sort of jigger those spaces to be perfectly suited for those activities. So where if we think back 30 years ago, everybody had an office with a door, and then we tore all that out and everybody put cubicles in. And I think we're going to tear all that out and rethink what that workspace is now. So we'll have collaboration spaces that are both physical collaboration and virtual collaboration, where you have the ability to throw documents up for all of us to work on and make a blended environment that we've all gotten accustomed to working virtually during this crazy time. How do we blend that back into the physical space as we return? So I think that's probably the first part of that. And then the second part of that is the physical real estate itself. I think we're going to see the commercial real estate people really thinking about, how do we reinvigorate these spaces? If a lot of people have said, you know, we are still working fine with most of our team working from home, why do we have all this real estate? And so they're going to have to try and figure out ways to reinvigorate that space and entice people back into those spaces. And maybe that's using the space completely differently, but some of that will also be making the space more modern. So what we've seen is traditionally a building owner will have some sort of lobby artwork. You've all seen it. There's a painting, or there's a mosaic, or there's a sculpture or something, and you see it once and then you forget it and you walk past it and it's invisible to you after that. And what we've seen is that a lot of the technology companies and some of the very forward-thinking companies shifted that gear completely. Salesforce is a great example. They have some pretty iconic lobby displays, but by putting a display in the lobby, you can make it topical, you can make it seasonal, you can make it informational, you can make it really a wide variety of combined messages, whether that's marketing, whether that's just beautiful things just to be beautiful as artwork. And I think that while right now that's been mostly tenant driven, I think we're going to see a lot more of that with the commercial or real estate investment firms are going to be doing that to try and make buildings that are somewhat stale investments for them be reinvigorated and be enticing to people that, maybe some of that is, hey, we were in 50,000 square feet of offices. We only need 20,000, but we still have a decent budget. Let's go find a cooler building, right? So some of that is just trying to get people to move into your building as opposed to staying where they're at. So I definitely think we'll see a lot of opportunities in commercial real estate growth, lobbies, and repurposing conference spaces and really the whole space.
Yeah, we have several buildings in downtown Atlanta where they have very large displays in the lobby space. And I'm going to tell you, every time I stop to look at it, because it is eye-catching, it does draw in attention. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So if you want to make a cool space, make something that's desirable, a place where people want to come, that is an excellent, excellent way to do it.
Sure. And in fact, when I was talking with some of our customers out in Silicon Valley, I just said, these are awesome, but what are you seeing as value in doing this? I'm thankful that they did. And frankly, they said out there, their number one problem is recruiting. They said that, uh, the example that was given to me is, you're about to graduate with a computer science degree from Stanford. You don't even have your degree yet, and you've got 12 job offers. And at some point, just offering more money they become numb to it, and so they have to improve the feel of the space so people feel like they're working someplace that's cool. Great example here in Atlanta, right? So NCR, National Cash Register, right? Like State Square Company, if there's ever been one, they said, hey, we're not recruiting from Georgia Tech across the street, for crying out loud, because people see us as this beige building. And so they built a brand new facility basically on the Georgia Tech campus that's one of the coolest buildings in Atlanta. It's got killer views, got a gym that overlooks the interstate. They put some displays in, they put all sorts of cool technology in there. And now when you go to Georgia Tech, all the kids are like, man, when I graduate, I want to work at NCR. That didn't happen 5 years ago. They weren't getting those kids to even come interview. And now they're completely recruiting a different class of people because of a piece of real estate. Think about that. That is an amazing investment in trying to get the talent, because talent's such a scarce resource now that you have to do something to make it cool for them to want to be there. And so that's a great way to do that.
Yeah, and you don't even have to go to that office space to take in the notoriety that comes along with being able to say that you work for that company and work in that space. It becomes so iconic at a point that everybody knows what's happening there and everybody knows what kind of experience they're delivering.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you think of 350 Mission Street in San Francisco, especially, that's the bigger display in Salesforce Tower out there. Everyone in San Francisco knows that display. So, obviously they all know Salesforce, but when you talk to somebody, they go, what do you do? And if they're from San Francisco, Salesforce. Oh, you did that. Everyone knows that. So it's made that building iconic. Everyone knows that space because they've driven past it and gone, when they drove past it, which maybe not as safe, but I don't know. I don't know. Traffic's always slow in California. They got plenty of time, but it makes the space iconic, and it makes the building itself something that is memorable, that people will go, oh, that's a cool thing. And we can't underestimate the value of talent recruiting. People want to work at the place that's cool. I can imagine, I haven't heard this personally, but I can imagine a 24-year-old in the Bay Area. It's like, where do you work? I work for Salesforce. Oh, do you work in the building with the waterfall? Yeah, that's, I can imagine that being like, oh, that's a cool thing, right? So, that's one of those sort of things that that people will self-identify that they work at a cool place that way.
Definitely. So you really kind of touched on messaging, and I don't know if all of our viewers know this, but you guys pretty much own Times Square, which is some significant bragging rights. I mean, everyone, whether you've been there or not, Times Square and what that looks like. So how many of the displays that are in Times Square are SNA displays?
We're about 2/3 of them. So most of we're the highest resolution display, and we will then reset that mark again. So we've set the highest resolution display mark at least 3 times, and I think we're about to do it a 4th when TSX Experience opens up. But we're about 2/3 of the displays there. In fact, our corporate address is 1500 Broadway. If you don't recognize that, actually the first floor of our building is Good Morning America. So we're on the 20th floor, 19 stories above Good Morning America, which sometimes makes walking into the building in the morning interesting.
I was just gonna say, what does that look like? You're having to go through all of those people waving signs and stuff every day. It's got to get a little frustrating. But.
Well, fortunately, our entrance is on the side road, so we're a little better off. So, but it's an iconic address. In fact, our conference room is the corner of our conference room up there is about 75 feet from the ball. When the ball drops on New Year's Eve, it's literally like across the street from us.
I'll be waiting for my invitation, I'm sure.
Well, come on up. Come on up. What are you doing next New Year's Eve? We'll do this. It'll be fun.
So how have you seen direct view impacting outdoor signage and playing a role in keeping the masses informed and really just like improving morale during this pandemic? I mean, I've seen some things. Do you want to share some?
Sure. Yeah, we've seen a lot of that stuff. In fact, it's really our clients sending us pictures of messages that they've been putting on there, which is kind of makes you feel good that you were playing a little tiny role in that.
Awesome.
Really, it's been going that way for a while. Even going back a couple of months when Kobe Bryant unfortunately passed away. Circa, currently the biggest display in Los Angeles, or not anymore, actually just got passed, but right across from the Staples Center had Kobe Bryant tributes all over it. So the messages aren't always advertising; they're not always what else, but they can be a lot of other things. In fact, I happen to have some pictures. Let me show. Let me share that. Here's just a few pictures of some of the messages that we've seen. The one in the upper left and the one in the lower right-hand corner are actually the same display. That's 20 Times Square, which is at 701 7th Avenue in Manhattan. That's right smack. It's basically the whole northeast corner of Times Square. And every day it's been going through a bunch of messages, love in the time of Corona and thank you to our essential workers and lots of messages like that. So we've gotten some good pictures. The other displays that you're seeing, are reminders to wash your hands. That the lower left, that's here in Atlanta. That's on Peachtree Street. So we've got a variety of displays around the world that we've seen our customers using as messages of taking care of each other and just being patient while this crazy stuff goes on. But we've also even seen where displays can be a contributor to emergency messaging systems. So, a lot of times in large buildings, they use building management systems, VMSs, where they're managing not only the HVAC, but the lighting and the elevators and all sorts of stuff is all tied into systems now. SNA Displays, we can build using our SDK, we can actually build tie-ins to be able to do things with displays through the building management system. So for example, in California, a lot of the buildings out there have tie-ins where if there is an earthquake, it immediately switches all the displays in the building to earthquake messages on where to shelter in place and where to find a safe haven or how to exit the building. Whatever the appropriate message is, that's all built in, so it just automatically switches to those kind of messages. So, we think of it's just a display, but it is still a communication device, and that communication can be marketing messaging, but it can also be messages to make us feel better when things are stressful, or it can be helpful messages in trying times as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible to think about, because there was a time when that wasn't a thing that was available. So think of how you would warn an entire building, floors and floors and floors of people, that they need to get to a safe place quickly. So that, I mean, I think that's amazing, and we may take it for granted a little bit because we're exposed to it so frequently, but I mean, that's a major development in my opinion. So how do you see that direct view can be leveraged to provide accurate messaging to educate people? I apologize. I think we just covered that. So I'm going to have to go ahead and skip right over that. Are there any other impactful opportunities that you've seen for direct view LED that maybe you hadn't expected?
Oh man, like I see a new creative use of displays almost daily. People call us even displays that don't exist yet, but with really clever ideas on how to build things into spaces. I can think of some. We do a lot of work for Margaritaville hotels, and behind their check-in desk, they basically build a floor-to-ceiling display. And so when you walk up to the check-in desk, they've got like buckets with a sand shovel in it and all sorts of stuff. Like, it feels very beachy. So they just put a beach scene immediately behind the check-in desk, and so it just makes you feel like you're standing on the beach while you're checking in, although you're in the lobby of a hotel. But it really gives it a really kind of a cool atmosphere in there. So being able to transport people to another place or to another time or another space or whatever that is, that's kind of a really cool thing. The displays are, I think traditionally we think of a display as a billboard or an advertisement or a scoreboard or sort of the traditional uses of them, but we're seeing that they're being used a lot more for atmospherics and for artwork and just doing beautiful things. an organization that I'm a member of is called CodaWorks, and that's the collaboration of digital artists, and it's literally a nonprofit for people who are artists in the digital realm. And for many, many years, being a digital artist was kind of looked down upon as not being a real artist, because you weren't doing paint or sculpture or, paper mache or whatever. Like you weren't doing like the classic fine arts. And I think it's really shifted gears now, where even most fine artists are as happy with a Wacom tablet or a mouse as they are with a paintbrush or whatever else. I can't think of another
I'm not a
art thing,
digital
but
artist.
a piece of charcoal or a pen or something, right? But it's, they are being accepted as genuine art tools now. So that's really kind of cool. And also that there is a big movement, especially within the corporate boardroom and the corporate lobby environment, to embrace digital artwork as opposed to more traditional artwork, mostly because it's easy to renew. So
Mhm.
unlike if you paid $500,000 for this huge tapestry, that tapestry is there forever. Where if you buy a display and you put digital art on it, when that starts to get boring, you can swap it to something else, and you can, like Salesforce is a great example. They hire digital artists, but they don't retire the old art. They simply add to it. Now they may put a piece of artwork on the shelf for a while, and then once everyone's forgotten about it, bring it back. So they don't run, they're not up to hundreds of pieces of content, but they keep all that content and they put it back into rotation. So what you're hoping for is somebody to go, oh, cool, that one's back, right? Oh, I love this one. And it's almost like a greatest hits at that point. So you can bring back some old favorites and keep the space invigorated and really make people feel like they're in a cool place.
Yeah, and what I thought was really cool about digital artwork now is that there are several people out there that are using algorithms to create their pieces of art. So it's
Oh
getting
yeah.
super technical, and it's absolutely incredible. I have to stay away from the posts when people post these new pieces, because I could sit there and just stare at them all day. They're so mesmerizing, but
Yeah.
the possibilities have really just opened up, and direct view LED really creates a stunning canvas. I mean, if we're being honest, I mean, the picture quality is exceptional.
Yeah, in fact, probably the most renowned artist in doing what you're talking about is a Turkish man named Rafik Anadol, who lives
Yes.
in Los Angeles. He does
Didn't know if we
absolutely
could say his
breathtaking
name or
work.
not. Trust me,
Yeah,
I
sure.
I follow
Rafik's
him hard.
He's amazing. I mean, he's a true, absolute genius of our time, and the stuff he does. I've talked with him before, and he said, I can't do my art without a display. And he said, if I show someone this stuff on a small screen, they don't get it. When they see it massive, not only the level of detail, but just the immersiveness and his term was crushing. It becomes this crushing thing that you experience as opposed to just something that you see. So he's a big believer that the medium also has to be massive, and in order to
Mhm.
really give the effect that it does. He's incredible. His work is, for anyone listening, if you don't know him, Rafik, Refik Anadol, Anadol, absolute brilliant guy, and his work is amazing. And he has said that he feels like the display technology, and he also uses projection, other things. He uses the right paintbrush for the paint, so to speak, depending on what he's trying to do. But he says direct view LED is one of the most impactful tools he works with. Very cool.
Well, I think we had a question. Ian unfortunately had to hop off for another meeting, but we'll make sure he gets this recording so he can get that answer. Did you want to take that, Josh?
No, you go ahead. You got it.
Okay. He said, from an LED tech perspective, as finer pitch direct view LED becomes more popular and IMD 4-in-1 LED tech takes shape, making fine pitch more robust, I've seen some LED manufacturers also building sensors of different types into LED modules, getting ready for actual touch interaction with LED screens. With
Sure.
the current state of things, do you see gesture interaction gaining traction over touch now that people may be more cautious to touch things like screens?
That is a great question, and actually, yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, so I think there's several layers to that onion. I think the first one is we regularly get people say, "Hey, can I get this touch?" And they're talking about a display that's 13 feet tall and 35 feet wide. Well, unless you're, King Kong, you can't reach the top and you can't reach the sides. So there's a challenge in displays that are large enough to be very impactful are also probably too big for touch. Now there's some multi-touch and some other things that you may do on a very large wall. So it sometimes makes sense, but you really have to kind of think about the application. Some people just say, oh, wouldn't touch be cool? The interesting thing though is we all are very accustomed to touch. We keep one in our pocket, right? So that's not on camera. There we go. But we all have a touch screen. We use touch screens every single day between our tablets and our phones. So I do think gesture-based will be a big thing, and especially now that people are reticent to touch things that hundreds or thousands of other people have recently touched. That could also be its own challenge. But I do think that gesture is some of it, but I also think some of it is also mobile interaction, where if I need to interact with something, can I essentially use my phone as a touchpad to be able to interact with a much larger screen? We've seen a few where this has been developed, where you can simply take it puts like a QR code on the screen and you snap it with your phone and it pulls up the controls to be able to play a video game or somehow participate, or even take a selfie with your phone and you become part of the scene on the display in front of you. So there's a lot of participatory and interactive things that you can do that involve not only your mobile, but even other camera-based technologies, gesture-based technologies. There was a lot of growth in gesture, and then it kind of died off. Microsoft killed off. They had a commercial version of the Kinect that when they killed that, it slowed that a little bit. But we're seeing some other companies with some very good camera-based technologies. I think we're probably just a little bit ahead of the curve on gesture-based stuff being really well refined, because some of it's learning how to pop us out of the background. Like it was just struggling to see my phone, see how it doesn't want to pop out of the background. Well, we have that same problem with with gesture base. If I blend into the background, it misses my gesture. So as that gets better, and maybe this, us doing all these Zooms, they're gathering lots of data to make that better, maybe, I don't know. But as that gets better, we will see more smooth interaction to gesture-based stuff. But definitely people want to be able to participate in large scale immersive things like that, and touch sometimes is the right answer, but it's not an all-conquering panacea. And so I do think, especially with the new normal moving forward, that we're going to see a lot more sort of detached participation things.
Right. Thanks for delving into that. I know it's
Sure.
A lot of moving parts there. So with regards to direct view, Michael Stewart brought up a question. Do you all agree with the 10x rule for determining the closest viewer? For example, 10 times 1.2 would equal 12 feet minimum for a viewer.
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, there's a lot of rules of thumb. The one I generally think is whatever it is in millimeters of pixel pitch. If you think of that in meters, and I know Americans, we don't speak metric, but you can multiply times 3 and call it feet. That usually gets you pretty darn close. All of those rules of thumb are going to get you to what I consider the outer boundary of the zone of occlusion, which is a nerdy term for basically the resolution of the human eye's ability to see the individual pixels. And whenever you have whatever that outboard maximum is, if you have that, so if let's say a 3 millimeter display, it would be the beginning of the zone of occlusion 3 meters or about 10 feet away. If I did that with a 1.25 millimeter, so have that resolution, which is actually 4 times the number of pixels, you're physically unable to see the individual pixels. Your eye literally can't see it. It's biologically not possible to see those pixels. But the bigger thing is how many pixels are right for the application. So while those rules of thumb get us in the right neighborhood, it really is also a combination of how large the display is, what the nominal viewing distance is, not necessarily how close away you could see it, but from how far away you would see it. Meaning, if it's a really wide display and you're 2 feet from it, yeah, you can still see the display, but you just really, even if it's a 0.9 millimeter, you really won't see what you're trying to demonstrate on the display. So at what distance am I back, far enough back that it makes sense as a space? You know, like what is this width of display? So that's part of it. And then also the content. If the content is fast moving with lots of bright colors and things like that, you really don't need a ton of resolution to have a really impactful thing. If you think of most football stadiums, generally those are 16 millimeter or 20 millimeter. People go, but they look so high res. It's because they're really big and really far away, where you don't, you know, could they have built AT&T Stadium in Dallas with a, you know, a 2.5 millimeter instead of a 16 millimeter? Sure, but it would have been 40 times the price, and it wouldn't have made the experience from the people sitting in the seats any better. So some of it is not necessarily, is this a rule by which we should select a pixel pitch, but it gets us in the right neighborhood, and then we can move up or down from there depending on what the budgetary needs are and the content needs are from a resolution standpoint. And you can always find the right technology that fits the budget and the mission to blend those two. But as a rule of thumb, your rule of thumb is, you know, there's a few of them and they're all pretty good and get you in the right neighborhood for sure.
Awesome. That's a great answer. Thank you so much. I believe that answers the Q&A here, and I think we've hit our time for today. Paul, I want to thank you for joining us and being a wealth of knowledge as usual. So we're grateful to be partners with you and SNA, and excited for things that are coming down the pipe and evolving here, and how direct view is going to bridge some gaps for interpersonal communication as well as art and communicating on a very large scale. So I'm sure we will talk soon. And again, we appreciate that.
Absolutely. And, you know, to return that, we love our Baker friends. You know, we have a great time with you guys. We work on a bunch of cool projects with you guys, and we appreciate the partnership as well.
Yes, you guys are a ton of fun, even just outside of work. We really enjoy you all. So, but thank you for joining us, Paul. Thank you for joining us out there. And as always, you can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook at Baker Audio Visual, and on Twitter at Baker Audio. We will see you next time.